Hello, today's video is a little bit weird. I'm going to try to recreate a project that I did when I was 12 or something back in the 80s. I was the proud owner of a Commodore 64 and there was this game called Defender, which I love it, but the problem is that the autofire of the joystick wasn't fast enough for me, neither the muscles of my finger, so I tried to fix it myself. I used the motor of an old cassette recorder, some wires, some foil paper, just put it all that together and build this crazy Frankenstein device that basically was rotating, and with that I was having an autofire. Of course, if we wanted to do something similar now, or even back at the day, what we did would be creating an electronic oscillator, which is something that exists on the joystick, which is better than building this kind of thing. But at the time, when I was 12, of course I didn't know anything about electronics, neither anything about designing something that looks good. So I'm trying to make it as it was, as ugly as it was at the time. The idea came from a magazine that explained how to build your own tactile joystick using an old cassette box, some pins, basic electronics. It helped me to learn how to use the joystick port. At the time it was very common to have these magazines that have code that you can type on your computer and little projects. It was really fun. If you want to know what's going on behind the scenes and getting more content from the videos I post, you can become a patron and support these channels. The links are down below. Now let's get to build this Frankenstein looking ugly device, which is this electromechanical autofire for the joystick. For this project you need a DC motor that you can buy very cheap on Amazon. Then you need a joystick, some tooth sticks, and then you need something to hold the motor. When I was a kid I used an empty old cassette box. Then I drill a hole in it and put the motor inside. In this case I have this spare part from an old 3D printing project, and by chance the hole that you see there actually matches the width of the motor, I was just lucky. So I decided to use this one. So the plan is to hold the motor there, and then I'm gonna drill a little hole and put the tooth stick inside that hole. Now let's power up the motor. Based on the specifications that I read, it should be 3 volts and 1 ampere of current. The next part is the most absurd of this project. In order to create a contact for the autofire, we need to drill a little hole and place one tooth stick here and the other one here. They are made of wood, so obviously they are not conductive. At the time I used foil many years ago when I was a kid in my initial project, but the foil is not that resistant to the movement of the axis of the motor when it rotates. So in this case I decided to do something a little bit more efficient in all this absurdity and put some copper wire around one tooth stick and the other one. Also I need to put some copper wire around the axis of the motor, which is going to make the contact between the two sides. So with the speed of the motor rotating, that will be the speed of the autofire. In order to make it as ugly as possible, let's fix the motor with blue tack. We need to connect one of the contacts of the autofire to the axis of the motor. That will give conductivity to the arms that are rotating and touch each of the tooth sticks on each side. Every time it touches one of them, a fire will happen on the joystick. The next step is to wrap around the tooth stick some of the copper wire. We need to make sure that the arms of the motor just touch the copper wire on the tooth sticks. But we have to make sure that it's not too close, otherwise the motor will get stuck on them. So we just need to touch it a little bit. We're almost done. What we need to do now is connect 2 cables to each of the tooth sticks to close the circuit. Next, we need a joystick and open it and arrange the contacts for the fire button. This is a joystick that I restore in another video, you can check that out. In order to trigger the fire, we need to make a connection between the blue and the black cable. So one cable coming from the axis, in this case of the motor, is connected to the black cable in the joystick and then soldered again back to the circuit. We repeat the same process for the blue cable. Your joystick might be different, so you need to check the internal connections and figure out which one triggers the fire. You can find the specifications of the joystick port on the Commodore user manual. You can also find an explanation of how to use the port on the video where I restore this joystick. You can find the links in the description below. Everything is ready, and instead of a battery I decided to use a power supply just to keep an eye on how much current the motor is consuming. Here is a modified joystick and the 2 cables. If we touch them, we trigger the fire button. I also placed some blue tack here just to keep it in place, otherwise it will just fly away. Finally, let's connect the cables of the joystick to the motor. It doesn't matter the order, the important thing is that they are just connected. I'm not worried about insulating them because if they touch, that's precisely the point. They need to touch to actually trigger the fire. Don't pay attention to the color of the cables between the negative and the positive. I have to invert them in order to get the motor to rotate in the direction I wanted. If we increase the voltage, of course it is going to run faster, but we have to be careful not to burn it. Okay, we are good to go. This is going to be very noisy, so be careful with the volume of your video. If I start the motor, I can fire with the joystick still. And this is the Autofire of the joystick. As you can see, it's not that good. Now, if we put our electromechanical Autofire, it's a lot better. I think I'm gonna burn the motor because it's almost 3 amperes. I don't think it's gonna resist that. Yeah, now it's going well. Now it should be. Look at that. That's a proper Autofire. That's an Autofire. That's an Autofire. That's really, really cool. Yeah, that's how I remember it. It wasn't working properly before. Let's see, I hope it doesn't melt.